It's the last Sunday of August in 2020. 2020 is a year that will most certainly go down in infamy for being a cataclysmic period in world history. This week, the world lost a record-breaking African-American actor in the person of Chadwick Boseman, who died at the tender age of 43 years. This week on the Bub Report, we reflect on the legacy of the actor and on the Black Panther movie's influence on reimagining Pan-Africanism in film. We also take a deep dive into the issues affecting Jamaicans as they head to the polls for their constitutionally due national elections.
Tuesday, the 18th day of August 2020 is appointed as nomination day. The date fixed for the taking of the polls, that is the general elections for the year 2020, is therefore Thursday, September the 3rd, 2020.
From the theft of public resources, when you add up the amount of public resources missing, it's more than $14 billion.
We also discuss susus, blessing circles, and pyramid schemes. We go beyond the hype to deconstruct the differences as law enforcement agencies, both in North America and the Caribbean, are beginning to take notice of the increasing surge in these activities. It's August 30th, 2020. Our guest for this morning's show are media scholar Kristen Smith of Howard University, Dr. Jermaine McAlvin, assistant professor and political analyst, TV producer John Pro Alexander, and musician Kellen Bishop. We welcome all our listeners and viewers to the stream for another edition of the Bub Report. A pleasant good morning, viewers and listeners, and welcome to another edition of the Bub Report. I want to welcome especially our audience down there in Grenada. And I would begin by giving us an update with respect to a story that we have been following over the last couple of weeks. And that is a story about the Lasages Range developments. I should let you know that we've actually followed up with the developers, and we originally intended to have a program with them. But we've since learned that there were some scheduling conflicts, and so they would not be able to appear on the Bub Report in the immediate period. But they have agreed that they will set up a time to appear on the Bub Report, and so we would give them the opportunity to tell their side of the story. We would also be reaching out to members of civil society in Dominica and St. Kitts, two countries that also have range development projects. And they would also be coming on to share their experiences around range developments in those two countries. Now, we've also learned that Jane Nurse, who actually appeared on the Bub Report a few weeks ago, she started a change.org petition demanding protection of Grenada's protected environmental sites. And so we're also watching that space as well. So please continue to follow with us as we follow that story. Now, I'm going to get to my first guest, who is out there in New Jersey. That's Dr. Jermaine McAlpin. Dr. McAlpin, welcome to the Bub Report.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, your country is preparing to have what I would term a pandemic election in a couple of days. Now, you said in the Jamaica Gleaner recently that the opposition People's National Party doesn't necessarily have a coherent message, and so it is not really resonating with the Jamaican public. Do you think that lack of coherence would hurt the PNP's chances in next week's poll?
So to contextualize, because those remarks were in a quite different set of circumstances. I think in light of the national debates we've had between the two major parties, 3 debates altogether, I think there's a sense that both party faithfuls are coalescing around their party, but I am yet convinced whether or not persons who are not, supporters, traditional supporters of either party, have gotten a sense of what they have to offer through the debates. Interestingly enough, one of the questions that came up in last night's debate was the ever-present question of fixed election dates. And we continue to play political football with that idea. But I often say that the reality is, if there were fixed election dates, if it happened during the pandemic, the elections would have carried on. So it's not the election holding themselves that is the problem. It is that in many ways, the virus was not contained because of several lapses, including but not limited to governmental lapse.
It would appear that the current prime minister, he actually called the election early. Is that not the case?
So let us clarify. On the Westminster Whitehall model, the parliamentary democracy, you can call an election up to the constitutionally due 5 years. You can call it any time before that, if as a politician you deem it strategically necessary to call an election. So let us be clear, health, COVID, all of that apart, politicians are politicians. It was a strategic decision to call the elections. The polls were seeing him ride a crest of wave, and the opposition was actually near stagnating. So we can debate all we want about whether or not it will lead to a spike, but thus far, I think the spike has been attributed to just a kind of lax approach by the Jamaican public, and that alone can't rest with politicians of either side.
Now, probably he was probably one of your former colleagues, but UWI Professor Christopher Charles, he said, quote, "The majority of voters tend to make up their minds at least 1 year before an election."
He said 1 year or 1 day?
1 year, he said, one year. He said the JLP seems to have understood this, unlike the PNP, because it has not stopped campaigning since it won the 2016 general election. So it would appear that folks might already have made their decisions.
We don't have any evidence to say that, but all the polls are pointing, because polls are not predictors, they're forecasting, right? All the polls, we've done 3 major polls, and they've all concluded that the JLP, both as a party as well as the leader, is ahead, several percentage points ahead of Peter Phillips. But as I said regarding the debates last night, people are voting constituency by constituency. So a blowout in terms of what the polls indicate about popularity of the leader does not always and neatly translate in a first past the post system to a blowout at the polls, right? The general election. So I think 2 things are at work. Popularity is important, but I think the hidden hand of this election is who can get out persons to vote in spite of the spike in COVID. That, I think, is the hidden hand.
Now, I know that Portia Simpson Miller, for example, was a very popular leader. Are you suggesting that people vote based on candidates, or they vote they do not vote on who the leader is at the time?
It's a combination. So Peter Phillips does not resonate as a populist as Mrs. Simpson Miller did. He's thought of as a more technocratic kind of leader, especially given his experience in academia and Ministry of Finance, Ministry of National Security. And so populism is not what will take Peter Phillips over the line. I think the real issue comes to galvanizing the base. People often say the PNP has a larger base. I think they have a more secure base because some of their most established seats are seats in what we would call garrison communities in Jamaica. So they start with a traditional base and the traditional assumption. So populism isn't going to help Peter Phillips. I don't think he has ever projected himself as a populist leader, and I don't think anyone perceives him to be that way. But he is more managerial, technocratic, cerebral, but I think still a very competent political leader. I think, however, that the demographics of the voters is what is going to turn the tide. I think favorably towards the JLP, because traditionally the PNP, and the polls have confirmed it very recently, most of the people who are supporting the PNP are 40 and above, 40 and older, while the nucleus of JLP's strongest support is 29 upwards, right? So you have a significantly younger demographic. In other words, parents, parental ages are supporting the PNP, while what we call millennials are moving towards or are supporting the JLP, largely because of PNP's unbroken 18 years. Most of them would have grown up under the PNP and known nothing else and said, look, we want to try something else, right? It's not just what our parents have said, we want to try something else.
What about the leadership of the current leader of the JLP, Mr. Holness? How would you rate his performance over the last 4.5 years?
I think part of the challenge that we see in rating political leadership is that what are the optics we're using? So if you are nearsighted, you have different lenses versus if you are farsighted, or if you have astigmatism or presbyopia. So the lenses I am looking is not just what you said in your manifesto of 2016, but what has happened. In their 2020 manifesto, they list about 40 odd promises that they kept. But a significant part of the promise that has thus far not been kept is the question of crime. And we know in the Jamaican reality, ever-present, Damocles sword of crime is always hanging over successive governments. Murder rates have spiked, but that alone does not tell the story. I think the economy is more managed. I think Jamaica was on a trajectory of growth, but nowhere is any country growing now in the last 6 months, because we've seen the COVID contraction. But the trajectory of economic growth was certainly very important during this time, and also providing some concessions to people who are of the poorer social classes. So I'd say those are important achievements, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Now, Mr. Holness came under a lot of fire for his cozy, if for want of a better word, relationship with the current holder of the United States presidency. He was not. He came in for heavy criticism from some CARICOM leaders because of that. How much, to what extent, do international relations affect the way people vote in Jamaica?
This is in the polarization of the 70s and the 80s. And in many ways, I think, international relations is strategic, but I don't see that being a make or break in national elections. People have spoken about it, but if you didn't bring it up, I'm sure a lot of people may not have even remembered it, because when they are voting, I think, in my estimation, my little experience examining the last 5 or 6 elections in Jamaica, I realized that politicians are aware that people have short-term memory. So they will do something to jog our memory very selectively. Now, if we were in full campaign mode, I'm sure a campaign ad would have come up about it. But then it would also have significant counteraction. So I think the pocketing of the message in such a tight window won't lead to people focusing on that. Really, most people who are going to focus on who to vote for, who are neutrals or undecided, will focus on what has happened in the last 6 to 8 months or over the last year. No one is going back to 2016 in the same way, primarily because we know that people have a short-term memory very selectively when it comes on to politics across the Caribbean.
And what currency does garrison politics still hold in the Jamaican political landscape? I mean, you're suggesting that there is this demographic shift in the way people are voting. What about garrison politics? Because that also takes into account a particular demographic as well.
Well, we have to unpack garrison politics, right? There are different types of political garrisons, right? If we're going to use that nomenclature. The reality of it is that they were always established as a fortified buffer against the other or the rival political party, right? So if we think of how they were originally established, first in West Kingston and then in St. Andrew and neighboring communities, they were created as buffers to the other one that was previously created, right? Some years ago, someone said that Tivoli was the mother of all garrisons, but we have many garrisons in the inner city communities along the industrial corridor called Spanish Town Road. And what you see there is that we don't expect any of these voting trends and switching that we're talking about to happen in these areas. Why? Because not only are they traditionally supporters, but they are almost buffered supporters. In other words, political opposition can't go in. So if we think of West Kingston, right, the PNP candidate that is running for West Kingston, I know he says that he intends to win, but he has no, almost zero possibility of winning. Equally so, a JLP candidate in South St. Andrew, right? So when we think of it, both parties have campaigned in such a way that they don't need to focus on these 7 or 8 constituencies that we could call garrison constituencies. And I distinguish them from safe seats, right? Because safe seats have political opposition, but they are unlikely to vote against the party that is incumbent. Garrisons, it is almost next to impossible, save for significant gerrymandering, for them to change their political. So when I spoke about millennials and young people voting, I wasn't necessarily talking about the pockets that we call garrisons. I was talking constituencies that are a little more marginal or a little certainly more competitive.
Any final thoughts? What happens with respect to Jamaica's economic development post this election? I mean, you know, the Caribbean is experiencing a very difficult, very, very difficult period.
Well, when you are vulnerable to external shocks, as we are in the Caribbean in general, and in Jamaica, where a third of our GDP is from tourism, we anticipate that there will be some contraction. Last night, I saw that Canada's economy has already contracted 10 to 11%. I suspect that when the post-mortem regarding Jamaica occurs, I know that we will contract significantly more. I was looking for in the leadership debates last night that Jamaica, the 2 persons who are wanting to be prime minister, I was looking for them to talk about vision for economic recovery, for a way out of this kind of reality that we're uncertain about. I didn't get visionary pronouncements from either of the persons who are wanting to be prime minister. I got the backing and forthing about manifesto and this, but no big idea. That is the kind of leadership that is at deficit, I find, you know, and that is what is necessary when you are a small state. You know, that is why, in many ways, Barbados is appealing to people in terms of the kinds of steps and the kinds of pronouncements by Prime Minister Motley, in many ways projecting an idea that we can, even amidst this pandemic, we can still forge a way as a viable small country. And I didn't get that visionary sense, that futuristic sense of what I will do as a visionary leader. Hardships there are, difficulties there are, but we will overcome. I didn't leave the debates with that sense. And I think the Jamaican public either you know, has descaled our expectations as to what we are to expect. Because finally, I just want to talk about the idea of corruption. When they polled Jamaicans, 47% of them, I think maybe 6 or 7 months ago, said that corruption was not going to be one of the things that they considered in determining who they would vote for.
That is interesting.
It says to me that people have accepted that these political parties are corrupt. And that is something you'll have to live with, and you will have to choose the lesser of the 2 evils in your perception.
Right, right. Okay, well, that's certainly very fascinating. Let us watch the space. Let us see how Jamaica votes next week. Dr. McAlpin, thank you so much. You have a wonderful week. Folks, we'll be right back with our guest, Kellon Bishop. Stay tuned.
Here's the cons for the loan. It is statistically impossible for the blessing loan to continue forever. It is theoretically possible since people can go back in, but it's statistically impossible for it to continue forever, which means that a lot of people are actually going to lose money in the loan. Let me break it down for you. So, for example, David and Aiden need 16 people to enter to both be successful. The next 4 people after David and Aiden would need 32 people to enter. Those 32 people would need 256 people to enter. Those 256 people would need 2,048 people. Those 2,048 people would need 16,384 people to enter to be successful. Those 16,000 plus people would need 131,072 people to enter to be successful. Then the number goes all the way up to about 1 million, and then 8 million, and etc. So the loan can't continue for a very long time, technically, if the whole world participates in it. But there will come a point where the number of people that needs to enter would not be able to sustain the number of people that is already in the loan. For example, even though, let's say, we made it all the way up to 1 million people actually got their $3,200 payout from the loan, that would mean that the 8 million people or more that is still sitting in the loan who still have yet to get their payout would lose out on their money. I'm trying not to be biased in this portion of the view, so this is why it's called pyramid structured. So we will have 1 million happy people and 8 million unhappy people, and that's
And welcome back. Let me welcome Kellon out there in Trinidad,
Yes,
and Tobago, my second Caribbean home. I say that a lot. Now,
right.
Kellon,
Thanks for having
tell
me.
us. Now, you've been posting on social media about there seems to be a popularity with these pyramid schemes in Trinidad. What is contributing to the rise of these pyramid schemes now?
Well, to be honest, I think it's a host of things, right? People using the fact that there's a pandemic, so there's a little hardship with certain jobs and people have lost jobs, whatnot. So they're using the pandemic. They're using familiarity. So people liken it to a susu, right? So they're using that to try to market it to other people. They're using rebel mentality where they're trying to be anti-establishment, so they're using it. They're trying to market against banks and different traditional lending institutions or financial institutions. So they're using these things, and then there would be a few people that you may know that have already gotten paid. So a friend may call you, and they have already received their payment. So they're using that also to market it to the general public, basically.
Now, you actually warn people against investing their monies in those schemes. It, I just don't get why people would think that if they contribute $35 that they're going to get $10,000 next week. I
Yeah,
mean, it's not the same as a susu at all.
no, it isn't. It isn't at all. But again, people at a vulnerable stage
Mm.
right now, so people are looking for like anything that they think would return on investment. So some people even saying different ethnic groups use it, and with no facts, right? No facts. So what I was saying is real group economics would be to actually pool money. If you get 4 people and actually pool your money and actually invest in a business where each of you all actually own part of said business, whether it be real estate or a traditional business, right? But the structure, they even make it into a flower and a circle with different elements to try to say it's not, to try to get away from it saying it's a pyramid. But
Mhm.
then when one person actually gets paid, they have to break that flower into two,
Right.
right? And essentially get double the amount of people that would be on half of the flower. So or circles. So even essentially it is still a pyramid, but they just presenting it in different shapes. Actually, since me posting my videos on it, I've actually been actively recruited even more because I have friends that call me personally to tell me about the great opportunity and whatnot, but I respectfully decline.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, susus, I assume, are popular in Trinidad and Tobago, as it is throughout the Caribbean.
Yep.
I'm just taken aback that people would not be investing in susus and
Mm.
would actually view the pyramid scheme as similar to a susu. I mean, it's just very dubious.
Yeah, it's I mean, again, I myself, I'm in susus, like the traditional susu, a real
Hmm.
susu.
Hmm.
And you know how it works. You pay monthly or weekly, however it is running, and everybody gets back the exact amount at different points in time. They get back the exact amount what they would have put in, right? But this scheme, you have to bring two people, and two people have to bring two people, and whatnot, and it isn't sustainable. But I mean, some people are selfish. I actually heard somebody in conversation say that after they invest and they get their two people, and those two people get two people, and they get their payout, they don't really care about the eight people or how much ever to that just lost money. So one person gain
Right.
and eight people lose. It actually takes 15, the way they structure it, it actually takes 15 people, I believe, for one person to get paid.
15, I believe
Sometimes.
so. Yes. So yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I mean, would you? It's I think where what morals you stand on. Would you rather get paid and at the expense of 15 other people losing, right? And those 15 people, in order for each one of them or the 14 others to get paid, you are each one would need 14 other people. So you see how fast it expands. So it
Yeah.
isn't sustainable. And actually, I had somebody called me from the States in Detroit, somewhere in Michigan.
Hmm.
And but what I was explaining to them is that because they say they're successful in it, but it's a larger population, right? So they may be able to sustain it for longer. But the population in Trinidad is 1.3 to 1.5 million. How are
Hmm.
you going to get the amount of people? And then there's so many different ones. How are you going to say you're going to get the amount of people to actually sustain this this
Yeah, and now one of the points you raised is that they're sort of framing this as similar to a bank. And I was listening to your post, and you had to deconstruct that. So can you tell us really the difference between a pyramid scheme and what the bank does?
Okay, so what I was saying, and I want to say I'm not anti anything, or I just like to give my opinion, right?
Hmm.
So a bank, you put your money in the bank, right? To me, then this is just my view. You put
Hmm.
your money in the bank. Say let's use $10,000. So you put $10,000 in the bank. Someone else may come to the bank to borrow $10,000.
Hmm. Hmm.
They were trying to say that the bank lends your money. Yes, the bank lends the money that is in reserves. However, if someone borrows $10,000 from said bank, at no point in time you are denied access to your $10,000, right? So you could go at any time and retrieve your $10,000. So it's essentially not your money. And besides that, um, yes, the bank lends for profit. They lend and has interest rates on a loan, right? Any business buys for less and sells for more. So it is a business. We know the bank does not pay the percentage as much as what they would lend and receive. However, as I said any business would actually do that, buy for less and sell for more. That's the nature of business. So that they try to say that it's a pyramid scheme. Yes, the bank makes money. We know the bank makes money. In order to gain wealth, you would have to invest in something. I'm not saying the bank is just a safe place to keep your money. I see somebody comment that your money is insured.
Yeah.
Any bank, at least in Trinidad, I'm not sure as to other regions, but up to $75,000 is insured, right? So there's a cap, right? I wouldn't keep $100,000 at home where you run the risk of, if you lose your house, let's say it's a fire, or God forbid you have a home intrusion, you're at risk of losing everything. So the bank is just a safe place just to hold your money until you're ready to actually invest in something. So the way to wealth is not the pyramid scheme where you are so selfish that you get into it and you take everybody else's money and then you leave, where or just keeping your money in the bank and just saving, because with inflation and everything you wouldn't lose money. But the bank is just a place just to store your money, get paid, so whatever services they provide you, because you yourself can go to the bank and get a loan.
Mhm, mhm. Now, how are law enforcement authorities? I know that the commissioner of police, he did make some colorful comments around that. I believe it was last week or the week before. How
Mhm.
are authorities dealing with this?
Well, you see, in law enforcement, you have to prove. You have to prove in order to convict of something. But they basically trying to make people aware by putting out statements and whatnot. But so far, that's all um, I have seen so far. Really, just putting out statements and trying to make people using social media to make people aware. Now, it's your choice if you would like to go, still go, take the risk and go into it. But if you do lose your money, then to be charged, there's something called larceny trick.
Yeah.
But but essentially, you are agreeing to
Hmm.
put your money in that said scheme. So somebody is not really obtaining the money on the false pretense,
Right.
right? So it's a tricky situation. It's a
Yeah.
very tricky situation. And as I said, due to the pandemic and the whole financial situation in Trinidad, a lot of people still going ahead, and people will succeed in it at the expense of others.
Yeah. Now I'm going to try and bring in John Crow here. John Crow, Alexander, TV producer out there in Brooklyn. John, I know you were having some technical difficulties, but I'm glad to see you this good Sunday morning, sir.
Good morning. Good
And,
morning.
and John, I'm sure you've been hearing this conversation here. Now, you've been in Susus for all your life,
All my
from what
life.
I heard.
Yes.
Yeah. So now that these pyramid schemes are coming on stream, how do you
But
respond to?
they're not those pyramid attempts are not new.
Mhm.
Um, we're going back in the years. If you remember Stephanie Johns, you might be too young to remember Stephanie Johns. You probably might
No,
be
yeah.
too young to remember Shackley and even the um, Avon selling women selling Avon and so forth. That's a pyramid scheme. I mean, every so often the Attorney General's office, whether in the United States or elsewhere, have busted them crack uh, uh, pull on raids, and busted the meetings and discovered lots of through of course the investigations and what have you. That's not a new thing, but in this period that we're in now, where everyone is strapped, if you will, and looking for a quick buck. I mean, the old adage of if it's too good to be true, chances are it is. Still holds. And like the young
Hmm.
man before, I'm sorry, I didn't get his name yet.
Kellon, his name is Kellon.
Kellan. All right, Kellan. Good
Yeah.
morning, Kellan.
Hey, morning,
Um,
morning,
Yeah.
and so
Mr.
that
Crow.
you find yourself, well, okay, well, so and so, like I have a friend of mine who tell me that she's been watered. Language, right? She's right now being watered. They're watering her right now. So which
Yes.
means
John
in
Crow,
the
this is
next
a family show, my friend. This is a family
No,
show.
no,
that's actually what they
no,
call it. What?
that's language.
Oh, that's the
Tell him,
language.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes,
that's when you get paid. They call it. There's the water, the earth, the fire, and something else, some another
yeah,
element. So
yes,
Oh,
when you're
that's
on the
interesting. No,
water,
I
yeah,
never knew this.
when you're
I
on the
didn't read that
water,
far. Yeah.
when you're on the water is when you actually get paid. The fires pay you,
right,
and the earth and
Okay.
the some other elements actually recruit. So something of that sort.
yeah. They have their own vocabulary, and so
Hmm.
Right.
that as you move up and as you move closer to the money, so to speak, right? And so that as a, I guess, a participant, you know that, well, in other words, like when you're playing that game and you say, well, you're warm, like you know that search game that we play as children. Well, you know, you're warm, you're warmer, you're getting close, you know, that kind of a thing. It's the same
Yeah.
thing here.
Hmm.
And so they have the mechanisms of sucking you in and making, you know, showing you all of the bright lights and of the vacations and the gifts that you get, etc., etc. So people, to be honest, there are some people who have been successful and who have, you know, monitor shows that, well, they went in and, like, one friend of mine said to me that they got more money than they actually put in so far, and they're gonna continue. And you know, every day they're trying to recruit. Another one is trying to recruit another one, and what have you. But like every time, every in my experience, every time I hear of these things, it always ends up where somebody is crying at the end.
Hmm.
Okay. I know the basis of this conversation is the old-fashioned susu. Now, many of us might not know this, but susu have sent a lot of children to college, have bought a lot of houses, have helped people own property, and
Hmm.
the old-fashioned way, like my grandmother, even my mother had a running a susu now in Brooklyn for, I would say, the better part of 40 years. I have my wife has been in a susu since she's been 15, since she was 15. Um, a family friend of hers had her susu for over 40 something years, and all members of the family have been in there and successful with it. Um, and they all, just to make it very clear for people who might not know what a susu is, in Jamaica we call it partner. Panama, we call it Susu or partner because of the migration of both Jamaicans and the rest of the Caribbean who moved to my to Panama during the building of the canal and so forth. And so we brought these customs with us. And so it's a poor man's way of saving because back then it was very difficult to open a bank account, as an example, and people house fire or robberies or the bamboo nut, you know, burst on somebody, discover the bamboo nut where you have it hiding, you know, in the blogger stool and so forth. So those forms of ways, as people, if you will, improve their lives, they went to the susu. And if the susu was run by a trustworthy um, person, you know you're getting your money. And it's 10 of us in the susu, it's $100 a week. Or $100 a month, whatever the arrangement is, and so everybody put in the $100 every whatever that period time is, and one person at a time get that hand, and so then you're
So
able to get a,
it's an equal distribution then.
it's an equal distribution of money. That's
Yeah.
why
Hmm.
that's why you could sue people who rob you in Susu right now. There was a time
Ah.
the
Hmm.
government here would ignore you if you were to come to a case and say, well, I was in a Susu, because the judges or the judicial system in the United States was not aware of this practice, right? But Caribbean people, I would say Caribbean people again, put one mark on the belt, and it's a recognized savings form or art form
Hmm.
of saving, and so that you can take someone to court. Like, say somebody is unscrupulous with who might be the banker, you know, in Susu, and when your time come to get your money, you know, the person disappeared, and which has happened. Like, there's a young man who came into my mother's Susu at one point, and once he got his hand, he disappeared. well, the jury is still out. But it's a dangerous thing to do, because you have, like, I using 10 as a number. Like, say you have 10 people, now you have literally 9 people hounding you down because you decide to walk away with the money. You know,
Mhm, mhm,
and it's not your money. It's, whomever it is that's part of this operation.
mhm,
Unlike the pyramid scheme thing, I don't know about it, and so I would want to speak on it. But I do know that it always ends up, in my experience, in my lifetime, it always ends up where somebody end up crying, because
mhm.
eventually it busts or it breaks, or however that
Mhm.
watering thing and the earth thing and the and the grooming
Yeah.
thing, and and those kinds of things. No, and by the way, Keller, no, I was not trying to take your show out of the family realm.
But I'm glad you gave me some context because again, this is something that I've done some research on, but not as in depth as I would have expected to.
Mm,
But
right.
have you guys known people personally who have been scammed by this?
Um,
Kellen, I
Um.
will start with you. I will start with Kellen, then go to John.
well, I know people who has joined
Hmm.
and has not yet gotten paid. But I also have gotten calls from people who was lucky enough to get in early and get paid. But now, as I said, when they get paid, I would obviously hear from the people I know who get paid, right?
Right.
But the 14 other people that paid, or the 8 other people that paid them and are waiting to get paid, wouldn't tell you that they didn't get paid. They would try to recruit you,
Right.
Wow.
right? So
So
the
So
that
that's where you
marketing
know
will
they didn't get paid. Okay.
yeah,
they will get paid eventually.
Right.
correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. John.
Well, yes, I've known people on both sides. I've known people who got, like I said, no, this friend of mine who tell me that she's been watered right now. She's been they're watering her. I've known others in previous scams who have actually gotten paid. You know,
Mhm,
and I've known people who uh, have ended up crying. Oh my God, John Crow! Like a cousin of mine, I ran into her on the train one time, and she in tears. Oh,
mhm.
I went to this meeting, and they always inviting you to a meeting. I want you to come with me to this meeting, right? And then
Right.
you go
Yeah.
like one time. Let me say, I went to a meeting one time, and the guy is making the presentation, and he's talking all of these glorious, you know, wonderful things that are being offered. And I looked down on the guy's shoes, and I said, "But wait a second, for somebody who is preaching all this money, why you can't buy a better pair of shoes?" And the shoes all beaten and I'm serious. It's always they always have some kind of a flaw in the dress. I mean, my God,
Mhm.
if you're handling that much money, at least take the time out and make yourself look decent, you know. But anyway, I digress.
I,
But yes,
I
there are people who have known who have walked away smiling, and I've known also people who walked away crying.
But where do we go from here? I mean, this really speaks to financial education or lack thereof. How do we begin to empower and educate our people? I think, Kellen, you're using your platform very well. People, I hope, at least I was educated on the nuances of the SUSU and the schemes and different things. Where do we go from here in terms of educating people to ensure that people are discerning with respect to how they are investing their hard-earned monies? Kellen, I would start with you.
well, I think with the internet, we have made the world a very small place,
Mhm.
Small village.
right?
Yep.
But it it's good and it's bad because you could search anything on the internet, any opinion on the internet, and get someone to agree with you.
Hmm.
So if you search black is the best color, and if you search blue is the best, why blue is the best color, you would get advocates for both. So it comes down to the said individual, but what what you can do is you can only put out and educate based on your opinion and facts. There will always be someone, and because there's something in it for them, there will always be someone who disagrees with you.
Mhm.
and that's where it muddies the waters then, because I would post that, and then the few people who are already in it and already invested in it would comment, right? I had people call me personally and tell me, because of my video, they didn't go into it when I broke down the different points and whatnot. And I had people who called me and said, I understand what you're saying, but look this video here. It's a flower. It's not a pyramid, or it's a circle. It's not a pyramid. And try to
Like water is
actively
like
and,
water is not wet.
and try to actively recruit me,
Yeah.
knowing my position. So if someone already saw my video and already knows my position on said pyramid scheme, and they still would call and try to recruit me, imagine what they're doing to the uncertain people, right? So it's up to people to look. I would say to look at the facts and form their own opinion. And as I was saying, I wouldn't just come and just waste down something and go against something. I'm not a negative person. I would try to give a solution. So what I was saying is, if people would really want to practice group economics, they should. If let's I'm just using figures. If you have 25,000 or 10,000, let's say 10,000 cash, and you find, because you're willing to give 10,000 to strangers in a pyramid scheme. If you have 10,000 cash and you're willing to invest with with three or four other strangers, 10,000 cash, and invest in a legitimate business. I was using the example where if each of you had 25,000 and three other people, that's $100,000, and you use the person with the best credit to go and try to use that as down payment on real estate, rental property, or something of the sort, right? Or whatever business it may be. It could be a food truck, it could be whatever business. But there have to be three honest people that prepare to split the profits, just as they split in the investment. They split the
Right.
profit equally, right? And that is group economics. If you want to purchase land, if you want to, as I say, rental property or actual business. So that to me is the solution. Someone said, to support the pyramid scheme, someone said, if it's so much people investing in a business, it wouldn't work. So what is the pyramid scheme? Right?
Right.
They're willing to do that because of greed, because you're willing to take 14 other people's money because of greed, because you would have the total amount, and you can choose to do whatever you feel to do with your money, but you're not willing to invest with 14 other people. You understand? So yeah.
John?
The listen again. I said I repeating myself, right? If it sounds too good to be true, chances are it is. And my grandmother taught me that. I mean, I was very, very young. I didn't even know what money was when she explained that to me. And so, okay, yes, in the on the short end of it, you will fare well, but on the long end, somebody's gonna cry, and it might be you crying, because in the front, everything looks very, 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 positive and what have you in front, because oh my goodness, like you could buy a brand new car, you could buy a brand new house, you could go on a vacation, all of those kind of things, and it's terrific. But as the pyramid gets smaller, because as you go up, it gets smaller and smaller, and so then people end up losing the shirt, or and that's when the crying starts. You, like Kellan just said before, they don't ever come out and tell you, look, I lost my shirt, but you have to be. I mean, listen, there are some tried and true systems, if I could use that phrase. Kellan just explained that whole idea of the the grouping of your money, which is the same thing in Susu, because there are some Susu where people and partners where people actually don't take their hand when it comes out, and they decide, well, let's leave that in there and let's build on that, so that the next person who comes in, not everybody will join in, but I'll give you an example. UJA, which is the umbrella organization for organizations from Jamaica, they have a raffle that they do every year. That they started out with one car. I think they're up to either 3 cars now or four. Where again, all of the organizations put their money together, and they create this huge raffle. And what Thompson, oh God, I can't. His name just went out of my head right now. But anyway, he came up with the idea. Well, of rather than going and buy the car, let's work with a dealer, so that they could give us the car at cost, right? And then we raffle the car. What has happened over the years is many a times the people who win the car, they would simply not take the car itself, because then they had to pay the taxes, etc., etc. But they would leave the car in there and ask for the value of that car. And so that it comes out as a win-win situation. Listen, if you have $10,000, I'm going to use Kellan example right now. If you have $10,000, you could go to my GoFundMe page, seniors, Grenada seniors. I'm dead serious, because I'm trying to send home a 20-foot container. I just sent home a 40-foot container with medical supplies. I'm working on a second shipment. Please feel free to go onto that GoFundMe page and deposit that $10,000. I'll gladly appreciate it. I'm able to ship that thing out next week. That would be such a nice gesture if you have that $10,000 that you got in the in the pyramid scheme. So,
gentlemen, we definitely need to continue that conversation. Sorry to cut you, John, but given localizing this, I know that has been an issue in Grenada with some religious organizations. Allegedly, I'm not going to get sued here, but we will be following those leads, and we'll be having a follow-up program on that. Gentlemen, thank you. Could you stick around so that we can continue a conversation in the green room? Let's take our final break, and we will bring in Kristen.
The first time I went to Africa, I was in college. I went with one of my professors. He was going to Ghana to as a choreographer and director to work with the National Theatre of Ghana to preserve some of their rituals in theatrical performances. So he was taking rituals that were in a communal, circular staging, and he was placing them on a proscenium stage, not necessarily so they wouldn't be forgotten, but just to be appreciated in a different way because of the advancements of Accra, the city. Yeah, it is sort of so things would not be lost. So I went there as his flunky and his assistant, and helped him with that project while I was in college.
And Chadwick Boseman in 10 years.
Hopefully I'm just happy, you know what I'm saying? Hopefully I've, done everything with my family that makes them happy, and hopefully that they're the life. It's not about career. It's about life experiences that you've done the things that you want to do. I don't have like wife and kids, but I have a huge family, cousins and my brothers, and
they're all close.
All close, yeah.
All right, Kristen, welcome to the Bub Report.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You're also from the same state as Chadwick, are you not? From South Carolina, is it?
I'm from North Carolina.
North Carolina. Okay, you're from North Carolina. Now, Kristen, reflect a bit. It is obviously a sad time for Chadwick, for fans of Chadwick Boseman, and for the Black community, not only here in the United States, but globally. Can you reflect on his legacy as an African-American who transcended, so much charisma, grace, and talent and kindness?
Absolutely. The Black Panther, when we think about just that one movie, it was a global moment for Black people around the diaspora. Everyone felt a moment to just be proud of their blackness. Because of this movie where we saw dark skin and brown skinned people, not, kind of, we don't know, are they black?
Right.
It was so at the front of making us feel represented. And one of the most beautiful things about Black Panther is the connection to ancestors. And that is so important that we saw that on a global stage like we did, to know that we are always connected. We are not just, here in this space by ourselves, and that we also can correct things, in our lineages and our families, and we really have the power.
hmm Now, one of the things that Black Panther as a film brought out is that it heralded sort of a new Black renaissance in this idea of Afrofuturism. Now, can you expand on the concept of Afrofuturism? I know that you also addressed it in your own podcast as well.
Yeah, so Afrofuturism is looking at how we are building a future. So it's spiritual, it's Black radical imagination, and it's way deeper than, oh, this is science fiction with Black folks. It is about how we're building the future. And we saw that in Wakanda, how they were living in this society that was superior to everyone advanced. What type of societies can we have on a global scale when we have the resources that we need? But one thing I did want to talk about, and I just had a conversation with one of our peers, Brittany,
Mhm.
is about health and Afrofuturism. I see a lot of people like, oh, Chadwick, he had cancer and he kept going. We need to build a future where we have the infrastructure to support Black people who are disabled, so that they don't have to hide things, so they don't have to feel the need to hide, and Afrofuturism is really about us doing practical things to make a better world, so that there is no oppression and violence and those things.
One of the things that I was really struck by following, Chadwick's battle with his illness was just how mean and callous people were, with
Absolutely.
respect, especially with the last video that he posted that he had to take down, because
Mhm.
comments from some of our own people, right?
Yes.
Uh, the aspersions and the negative commentary and things like that. How do we confront those things?
So fat and disabled people have, for, decades at this point, have been telling people to stop commenting on appearance. No one has listened to fat or disabled activists and organizers. And so now that we see someone who is, they're thin, perceived to be in good health because, they're not fat or they don't have a disability that we can see. So it was easy to make them a target.
Mhm.
So again, we see health and Afrofuturism, how we address each other, how we treat each other. It is so important for us. And I know the first thing you do when you see somebody, oh, you're looking good, but you never have context of what is going on. So we just can no longer be invested in just physical things, because there is no way. And I think yesterday, people had that moment, was like, oh, we can't talk about people, and then someone shared a photo of like LeBron and his hair, and someone was like, but I thought y'all just said that, oh, we don't know what's going on with people, and now you're like right back at it again. You're doing
Yeah.
the same things,
Mhm.
you know.
What would Chadwick's legacy be, do you think?
I think it will be one that lives on. Like, I'm probably going to tell the children in my family about going to see the Black Panther. And then all the other movies he starred in. I mean, he really has done some very it's work that just will not be forgotten. And I think he is opening up another discussion, because people didn't even know that this man was disabled. Like, we had a Black disabled superhero. That is our conversation. But we have to, now the question is, can we start building infrastructure to support our Black disabled people on a global scale so that we have the things we need? That is Afrofuturism, you know?
Mhm. And finally, representation. I think that a lot of the work that he did uh, really spoke to representation, especially, I mean, if we were to read some of the Bunch report, it speaks about underrepresentation in Hollywood. And one of the things Chadwick said that really stuck out with me was that, he was recruited to perform in a soap opera. And that character, that deadbeat dad who was a drug addict, he didn't want to play that character, and he challenged that representation. So, what do you think his legacy would be on that representational front?
Absolutely. I really love that story about him turning down that role, because I think a lot of times it's this idea, well, you have to do this to so you can secure other roles. And his investment in not doing that, I think they even said Disney wanted, oh wait, can we say Disney? I don't
Yeah,
want it. Okay. but but he talked about them wanting to do a British accent, and I think all of them kind of stood up and were like, no, that's not how this goes. We're not
yeah,
gonna, have British sounding people in this African movie.
yeah.
But then another thing we have to think about in Afrofuturism is the importance of the arts. We don't have a Chadwick if we are not invested in the arts,
Mhm.
and the producers and all of those people who make the movies. And, we have to know that our freedom and liberation is tied to the arts. It just, and in the West, the way we practice science is does not leave any room for imagination, for anything. It's kind of just black and white. And that's not how Black people do liberation or do anything, you know?
Mhm. Kristen, thank you so much. And I will be seeing you virtually somewhere because we're not in class
Yeah.
this semester.
Yes, yes, yes. Thanks for
And
having
thank
me.
you for pairing. Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, folks, so this has been another episode of the Bub Report. Thank you so much for joining us. And I wish everyone a productive and wonderful week ahead. Bye bye.